New Zealand's horticulture sector is an efficient user of water, utilising just a fraction of that required by other regions for the same production. This water efficiency is a combination of the detailed understanding of plant physiology, soil health properties and sophisticated production practices. Recently, countries such as Australia and those in Africa and the Middle East have looked to scientists such as plant and food researchers Dr. Brent Clothier to better understand the water use of their own horticulture systems.
One of the imperatives to minimise the water footprint of production of fruit from trees and vines is to understand how much water the trees are actually using. So we've developed little tools that we can put into the tree to measure directly the rate at which the sap is moving up the tree. The sap moving up the tree is a direct measure of how much water the tree is using. Then we've also put equipment into the soil to measure the changing soil water content in the root zone. So we can see the water come in from irrigation, we can see it taken up by the tree and used in relation to the climate. As well, we've buried little flux meters. These are like buried rain gauges, so we can see if any water is leaking out the bottom. So we understand fully the water economy of the tree. And we can relate that to the amount of production from that tree, so we can calculate how many litres were used to produce so many kilograms of fruit. We've applied this in New Zealand across a range of trees and vines, kiwi fruit, apples, and now we're using it around the world because the physics we've developed and we understand can be applied under a range of conditions. We're using it in apple trees in Australia, both in the state of Victoria and in Tasmania. We're using it on date palms in Abu Dhabi for Environment Abu Dhabi, who are trying to minimise the water footprint of date production. And we're also using it in the central highlands of Kenya on avocado trees on the smallholder farms, where we're trying to improve production there to alleviate the poverty of the smallholder growers. We can directly interrogate that equipment from our desk in New Zealand. We can analyse the results and provide advice as to how to minimise the irrigation, how to maximise the yield of the trees. So what has the value been of the kind of research that we've done about minimising the water footprint? Well, here in New Zealand, we have worked with 7 regional councils to improve their irrigation allocation procedures so that they allocate the correct amount of water to the growers. In Australia, we've been looking at the impact of high temperatures and how overhead irrigation can be used to drop the temperature in the middle of the day to stop the fruit cooking on the tree. We've looked at the impact of netting and how that netting can reduce the heat load on the tree and reduce the water use. In Abu Dhabi, with date production, we've been able to identify that the current irrigation regimes are using 3 times as much water as they should, and so that the change of practice there will reduce the amount of precious water that they're drawing out of the aquifers. And in Kenya, we're developing pruning strategies for the trees to reduce the leaf area so that the trees use less water during the dry period between the 2 rainy seasons and sustain the production during the crucial period of fruit filling of the avocados. So what's the advantage of working around the world in Australia and the United Arab Emirates and in Kenya for New Zealand? Well, for us, working in those challenging environments of Australia with heat and water and Abu Dhabi with even more heat and water, and in the Kenyan highlands, we're up against far more challenging conditions than we currently face here in New Zealand. But the information and the tools we're developing there will forewarn and forearm us for changes that will happen in New Zealand as our climate changes into the future. So we'll be able to use our tools and techniques here in New Zealand in new environments under new conditions.